What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So as y'all know, today is going to be the weekly time trial reset here on Gran Turismo 7. The other one, which is going to reset on Thursday, is going to be with the Ferrari Testarossa. That one honestly wasn't all that terrible, but I do admit though, the one here with the lovely Gran Turismo F1 looking car is probably going to be fairly difficult. Currently, I am going to be sitting at 125.3 at a 2.69%. I'm not going to lie, I could definitely improve my time on this one, but you know what? I was having a few issues trying to use this car and stuff, and I just don't want to go back into it, although I might end up doing that later on, but I'm kind of happy with the time I did end up getting. Currently in top 3%, you're looking at a minute 25.6 seconds. I'm going to say right now it's probably not going to drop much farther from this point, maybe around 0.020, 0.30 if that or something, but I definitely won't see it going down much more than what it currently is at. So again, for this one, you are going to have to use the vehicle that the game does end up giving you unless you own it. So I did end up doing it this way. I did this color here. Let's jump right into this. Regardless though, here in the settings, the first thing I want to go over is going to be the assist settings. For this, I am going to be running manual transmission, which is probably not that surprising. But for the TC this week, I am running one. The reason why I recommend it is it is going to help so dang much coming out of the corners accelerating. I was trying on zero, guys. The car really does spin a lot, so I would definitely recommend trying one out. It really does help so dang much. Besides all of that, though, everything else is going to be off here. My active stability is going to be on, and my counter steering assistance is on weak. Besides that, when it does come to my controller settings, nothing too insanely special here. Basically, everything is completely bone stock. If you do need help, though, sometimes the steering sensitivity does end up helping a bit. Besides that, guys, the last thing I want to mention with the settings is going to be the ghost settings. I would recommend trying out personal and loaded ghost. They are going to help you in different areas to where you might be slower, and of course, you're also going to see where some of the better drivers are some of the best drivers, and probably try to take their lines and try to improve in that aspect, while also watching your personal ghost from the exact same angle. Now, besides all the settings, though, let's now talk about the track. So when you are starting off, you are going to be basically like the other time trials to where you have to get to the starting line of it. And with that, you're normally going to have to do at least one corner, maybe sometimes two of them. For this first corner, you are going to encounter one thing I found hilarious about it is you could pretty much mess this one up and probably not be perfect, at least for the beginning of the event, and still have a great start to the race itself. Probably not going to want to mess that corner up at the end of the race when you're trying to get your best time, but at least in the beginning of this turn, though, you definitely can mess it up slightly. And what I do mean by that, though, is you're probably going to have a few different approaches on this corner, but you know what? Most of them probably will end up working. Whether that's going to be going back down in the third, aiming into the corner better than going back into fourth gear, or on the other side of that, basically staying in fourth gear, pretty much flying around it, slowing down a bit, slamming the gas down, then basically accelerating out of it. Now, one thing I'm sure people might be wondering is, well, what speed should I be aiming for when I do end up getting to that starting line? One thing I was noticing, regardless of how bad my turning was or whatever I might have did in that corner, I was always doing around 186 to like 190 or so miles per hour. I would say the upper part of that is probably going to be like 190, most likely coming out of that corner absolutely perfect, and boom, you're probably going to be a tad faster doing 190 than 186 or like 185. Funny thing is, 5 miles per hour really does make a difference. Besides that, though, you're then going to have a pretty long straightaway, not too crazy, but you are going to have some time to basically max the car out doing 200, and then you will end up approaching the first corner of the entire event that is really going to matter. For this one, you are going to have a pretty tight S corner, guys. I gotta admit, this corner is kind of annoying to get right. The reason for that is certain runs I would be really great, then other runs I would honestly be terrible. But then again, though, it is going to be the type of thing of learning that track, learning a brand new car, then most likely getting faster every time you do it. Now, for this corner, though, one thing I gotta admit, the best place I found to stop on this one is going to be right before the 100 meter, I guess you could say, sign thing on the side of the road, guys. This is the best place I found, and there is going to be a few reasons why I do think this. So yeah, you could probably like slam your brakes a tad past that 100 meter sign, but the thing is, though, you're probably going to take the turn a tad too wide, then boom, you're already going to be too slow. The reason for that is you are going to have to cut this turn a bit in order to get around the next corner at a better angle. The thing is, I was practicing going around it going, okay, well, let me brake a tad later, let me take this a tad wider, and guess what? it wasn't working, bro. It just wasn't. I was always too slow. I was like, okay, well, I'm losing way too much time. Let me try to cut this a bit. That will require me to probably break a tad earlier. Turns out that was definitely the best way to do it. And with that, you can also go pretty dang far over to the right, but do not touch the grass because that is going to basically ruin your entire run. But you can definitely cut that, guys, going far over to the right. That will then immediately have you set up for the next turn, which you will then have to do a tight left on. For this, I was noticing that you can bounce the apex of the turn slightly on this one, even sometimes going over to the orange part of it. I don't know what that's called, let me know in the comments, but I did actually jump over that once, and I was managing to fly out of the corner even quicker. I guess some of it is probably going to be a tad RNG based because we all do know how the car is going to be pretty dang bouncy in certain areas, and going over certain things, I was noticing the car likes to bounce, other times it doesn't. Before this, I would basically ride the side of the apex, fly around the corner. This is also why I would recommend having your TC on 1 because it is going to help so dang much coming out of them. The reason for that, guys, I was trying a few different runs basically having 0 TC. I would come out of these turns trying to hit the gas, my car would just keep sliding. Having that on 1, you can then ease into it better, the car's going to grip, you can shift up, giving you even more speed. Besides that, we're then going to have a pretty normal straightaway, get that car all the way up to 200 miles an hour, to which you are then going to approach the next S corner, which I gotta admit, this one's also pretty annoying to get right. The breaking point on this area, I would say, is going to be right around or before the 50 marker. I normally would probably go slightly past her the second I see it, maybe right on the apex of that, right after that sign, I would then stop. And then for this, you're also going to have to cut the turn a bit. So for that, again, do not go on the grass because we all do know what's going to happen there. But instead, try to cut that a tad tight on the left side, guys, right where the grass is. That will immediately set you up to almost take the next corner on a straightaway method. For that, you're also going to want to avoid the big yellow things because if you barely touch one of those, guess what? You're basically cooked, so do not touch one of those. That will also ruin the run. But if you do line that up right, one thing I really noticed that's so dang important. Now, with that is also going to stem all the way back to the point you did end up breaking on, lining you up to cut that corner enough. That way, it's then going to line you up enough to cut the next corner coming out of it in the perfect angle. If you guys do end up messing this corner up, there's going to be one unfortunate thing. I was noticing the car will end up bouncing on the apex thing on the side of the corner there, and guess what? You're basically going to be doomed. You'll lose traction, you'll slide off the road, and then on the other side of that, if you're too far to the right, you hit the yellow things, you are then going to have a failed run. The way I did want to do this is to basically pretty much aim the car going over the middle of it. That way, if you're going to have it at the perfect angle, it sends you right into the straightaway, not hitting the yellow thing and also giving you the most speed coming out of it. Sad part is I did end up messing this corner up, which easily cost me hundredths of a second, so I would definitely recommend trying that out. But again, if you're too much to the left or right, you're neither going to bounce over it, losing traction, or hitting the yellow thing, which is then going to cost you the entire run. We're then going to have a small straightaway going into the next corner. For this one, I did honestly find to be fairly simple. Like, yeah, I did mess this one up a lot, not going to lie. But for this one, though, barely tapping the brakes and shifting down into third gear, then immediately going back into fourth gear in the corner, you can then probably accelerate decently out of it. But if you go too much on the left side, you're probably going to spin out, because I was noticing, and I also did the exact same thing on this run, which we can definitely all see that my run was far from perfect, but it was good enough to get into gold, which is something I was aiming for. But do be careful, guys, because I do know some people might try to fly around the corner. I was also doing that. Like, I was like, okay, well, I can ride the left side of the track, right? Well, no, because you will then end up basically spinning out or even losing some speed, which is then going to cost you that golden run, because one tiny corner mistake is, well, going to pretty much make you cooked. Ask me how I know. Besides that turn, you're then going to have another tight corner, guys. I did end up staying in fourth gear on this one. Sometimes I found myself pretty much going back into third, but if you take this at the right angle, you brake slightly before it, you can definitely stay in fourth gear, pretty much power out of it. And you're also going to want to avoid the left part of that track again, because if you go too far over, you are then most likely going to start slipping and sliding, which is not all that fun. We're then going to have a pretty long straightaway, which again, you'll probably max the car out to around 200 plus miles an hour. You're then going to approach a pretty interesting corner that, well, a lot of the times I was messing up on, but funny thing is, the time I did end up beating my golden time on it, I somehow did really well at this point of the track. Why? I really have no clue. But for this, though, I did end up braking right around the 50 marker on the side of the track. I figured that was a great spot. That way I can then aim into the left side of the track. I also went down into 4th gear, which I would recommend doing. Like, yeah, you could be in 5th, guys, but honestly, 4th is way better on this one. If you cut that tight enough, it's going to aim the car perfectly around that corner. You can then basically fly out of the second one all the way onto the straightaway from the third one, and I feel like that was one of the best ways to do it. Like, yeah, I did actually try this going into 5th gear. I was like, okay, well, let me stay in this. Always messed the corner up every time I did it. I then went into 4th gear. It gave me way more grip, way more speed, but also a lot more speed coming out of the final corner onto the straightaway. We are then going to have the final turn of the entire event, which I'm sure everyone is familiar with because you pretty much started on this corner, but do not mess it up on this run because, this is going to be the point of the race that most likely is going to matter, not the beginning of it before you get to the starting line. But if you are having issues on this one, you can go into 3rd gear on it, or you could do what I did, basically stay in 4th gear, tap the brakes a bit, then immediately start accelerating. Once you get around the turn, probably halfway through it, you can basically slam the gas down all the way to the finish line. Funny part is, guys, I was basically behind my ghost in lots of areas in this event. And in fact, though, the insane part to me, though, is I was basically slow in multiple areas, always being behind my ghost. Funnily enough, though, I somehow passed my ghost on the final corner because I got the best angle on it. So yeah, you could probably mess up multiple turns, probably not be perfect, but it takes one corner, guys, to beat the entire run and basically beat your ghost, getting you into gold on the said event. If you have any questions, do let me know in the comments below. Here's the gold run I did end up getting in the new Gran Turismo car. Do let me know what you guys think about that car. Are you going to buy it? To be honest, I don't really know if I want it.